Hey everyone, and welcome to the AnthroPuzzled podcast. I'm your host, Abby Letzinger. In every 2 weeks, we're going to explore how anthropologists are forging unique career paths beyond the usual academic sphere. Tune in, get inspired, and start piecing together your own career puzzle within the world of anthropology. So, super exciting. This is the very first episode of the AnthroPuzzled podcast, and our special guest that we have on today is Hanna Stram. She graduated from Kansas State University with a bachelor's in business administration, specializing in marketing, and has a minor in anthropology. How are you doing today, Hanna?
I am doing great. Thank you for asking. I appreciate you reaching out to me and letting me be a part of this podcast.
Awesome. So yeah, we're just going to talk a little bit about kind of what you do in your day-to-day life, working for Fox and as a coordinator for distribution marketing. So what exactly is that?
Oh my gosh, that is such a loaded question. I'll kind of give a little background of what distribution is in the entertainment world. So distribution is like how you watch your TV, how you watch your sports, how you watch your entertainment. For my boyfriend, it's like, how does he watch the NFL? He probably has YouTube TV or Direct TV or Dish. So my role is working with our distributors like YouTube TV or Dish on their marketing objectives, which are like acquisition and retention. Well, what are those words? How do we get people to stay on their provider? And how do we get people who don't have a provider that matches their financial needs and like the way that they watch TV? So I work as an account manager. So that's working on the distributor side, being client facing and talking about strategy. But I also work as a creative. So I work as a Fox Entertainment creative marketer, and I work on all of those marketing assets, those imagery, those videos that you might see. And I help market those to our distributors and kind of just like integrate both my jobs into one.
And like walk us through what a day in your life would be like when you go into work.
Oh my gosh, that's another, I will say something that I feel like everybody says in their job, like every day is so different. I will lead with that every day is so different. So when I get on my work day, like on my email or if I'm in the office those days, because I work a hybrid work from home / in office day or in office program, I would say I work with my accounts. Like I check all my emails to see if my partners have reached out to me on assets that they want to approve for. Right now we're in the NFL season and college football season. So is my partner reaching out to me on them wanting to support the NFL or college football? And then I work with our Fox Sports brand lead on, okay, are these all good to go? Can we use these to promote NFL or college football or MLB or Fox Entertainment show like The Masked Singer? So that's kind of what it looks like in a day-to-day, is just living in my email and then living in Photoshop and Premiere Pro, because I also work as that creative. I also track everything from a brand perspective. So I'm tracking every placement that our distributors are leveraging our assets. So it's just like a giant Excel file. So I live in Excel. That's like, I would honestly say like 3 hours of my day is living in Excel.
Oh, wow. That's insane. So like, when you say like your distributors, is that kind of like the different programs that Fox has?
No. So that's a good question for the people that do want to be working in entertainment. The distributors are like Direct TV. Like Direct TV distributes content. YouTube TV, Hulu Plus Live TV, they distribute content. Another distributor is like Amazon Prime, but I don't work in the streaming world. I work with live TV. So our programming that you're talking about, we call it just programming. So that's like NFL or The Masked Singer. I say The Masked Singer again because that's like the big staple for Fox Entertainment. We have a new TV show called Rescue High Surf. So that's our programming. And then we go work with the distributor.
Okay, so how did you get into a position like this? Like, what was your schooling like, or did you have any like volunteer experience that you're like, this sounds really cool, I want to do this?
Well, I feel like I'll start with how I got this job. And I think it kind of goes back to actually when I graduated school. So we'll start with how I graduated from school. I graduated 3 years ago. I was relocated to Los Angeles for my first job out of undergrad school. Not grad school. I'm not there yet. So I worked in tech sales. I worked at Adobe, loved it, but I was selling marketing software. And so I really wanted to understand what it was, what it meant to be a marketer in this day and age. And so answering your question, it led me to just networking with people. I probably like networked with 200 people in that year when I was like trying to transition into a marketing role. And that was through LinkedIn. That was reaching out to like just random family friends. And I was put in touch with the director that I actually work now with, who's my boss at Fox Sports and Entertainment. And originally it was just to talk with him about like, what is his day in the life looks like? What does he do? What does he like about his job? And funny enough, he was hiring at that time. And so that's what led me to applying to the job that I'm in now. And I've been in it for a year and a half. So to answer your first question, that's what got me to this role now. But what I think led me to applying to this again is like understanding what marketing is. Like I really wanted to know what that looked like, but tying it back to anthropology and just like the study of humans and our opinions and how we come to be, I am fascinated by what also draws us to just like content and like how you get someone hooked to watching content. And granted, like the stuff that I work on has been around for generations, like watching NFL, watching football, watching baseball, watching a show after work. But I wanted to understand how to market stuff like that. And so I think in hindsight, like studying anthropology, like solidified going into marketing and getting me this role that I'm in now.
Okay. Do you think you'd ever pursue like a master's in anthropology?
Yeah. Funny enough, I think about it a lot, actually. Before I graduated, I really wanted to go all the way and get that PhD and be an anthropology professor, which is crazy to think about now that like 3 years later, I'm not doing that at all. But I do think about it. I haven't actually met anyone yet, though, that has done the master's in anthropology and then works in business. I know that there are people out there, but I just haven't like crossed paths with them yet. So it's definitely on my bucket list to get it. I just don't know when I would do that just yet.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing with an anthropology, master's or a PhD is most people who get that is because they're going into academics. Like they want to teach or they want to do ethnography work or,
right.
It's one of the other subsections like biological anthropology where like you have to go through that schooling. Otherwise it's, it doesn't do much for you with just a bachelor's. And that's something I encountered when I was in school and I got my anthropology degree. I'm like, okay, well, what can I do with this now other than being like, oh, this is a nice specialized skill that I have that I can use in like HR or something or international relations. And that's kind of like, why the podcast is here, because we want to open up that transparency to other individuals of, there are career paths out there, knowing whether or not you need to spend that time and money getting a master's, whether it's necessary or not.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like this got said to me so much when I first started my career search in school. And I even get told it now of just how do you pitch yourself to people? Like this phrase is so overused, but like, what is your personal brand? And I have leaned into my minor in anthropology in a weird way, in just the sense of like, I've been able to understand ambiguous people problems. I'm able to connect with lots of different people because I think anthropology taught me like, you kind of have to look at things in such an unbiased way. And maybe I'm not using my world religions understanding of the world. Like I'm not bringing in how I studied like Hinduism and Catholicism into my resume or into my interview questions. But I think just talking about it in this way of like, I've been able to learn how to understand people in a better, more holistic way. I think that has helped me in like interview questions, for example, with work or in networking calls that I have with people.
Right. And it definitely makes it a little bit more open-minded to what's going on in the world and like being more understanding of other people's like religions, their cultures, the way they do things. And that's definitely something you need in business, because I know some universities have started a degree where it's called business anthropology. I can't remember which university started it, but I definitely think it's something that's useful because it mainly focuses on anthropological theories, methods, and, how to construct study organizations and marketing. So maybe if you go get your master's, it'd be on like something like business anthropology. So it pulls together your marketing and your anthropology degrees together.
Yeah, I definitely will look it up because Yeah, I loved it so much. Like, I will say studying anthropology was like the highlight of my college 4 years. So if I do get a master's, I will look into that.
And I agree, because I started with my business major and then I got halfway through and I'm like, man, these academic courses in like accounting and economics, I'm like, this is so much information and it's like not fun information to learn. It's just like necessity. And so I'm like, I need something to spice this up a little bit. So I started getting into anthropology. So I had courses like rituals of human remains and forensic anthropology thrown in there. And I'm like, this is so much better.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny too, because like as much as like you talk about macroeconomics and accounting and finance, as much as I also hated those classes, I work in the sales department of my company. So I actually do have to somewhat know those things because I have to understand like what's going on, one, in the sports and entertainment industry, but then also like, how are our companies doing? How are our distributors doing? How is like financially, what's going on? What's going on within the economics of the country and the world? So as much as those classes suck, I guess to like anybody, like I would almost say to myself, when I was in undergrad, like, you should have listened a little bit more. But you passed the classes and that's all that matters. So
Right.
As much as I hated those classes, I understand now why they're taught when you study business. So
Right.
I digress. That's a different rabbit hole that we don't need to go into.
Right. Yeah. So one thing you did mention earlier was how networking helped you kind of get into the position that you're in. You know, you were talking to people on LinkedIn and family, friends, and that's how I found you. Was I went on LinkedIn and just searched up anthropology. So anybody who had anthropology listed on their LinkedIn was popping up. So how do you feel like networking helped you get the position that you in, and how it might help other individuals, you know, in just job hunting in general?
Yeah, I would lead with networking has helped me get both my jobs out of college. It has also helped me get all my internships in college. And I think, as cheesy as it's going to sound, like, it's really putting yourself out there. And before you put yourself out there, knowing what like who you are, like what are you going to bring to the table? Why do you want, like, knowing why you want to network with them beforehand so that you're a little more, or you can be a little bit more concise when you go into those networking chats or calls. But yeah, I did it through LinkedIn. I did it through just asking people that I knew or that I was friends with, or like a family friend from like Iowa, and just asking the friend from Iowa, like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm studying this, I want to go into this, you know, thoughts, suggestions, advice, and then you go from there. I think it's super important because it, one, like, broadens your, I hate that word, but like broadens your horizons and broadens your circle. But it also, through networking, can show you other ways of doing a career. Like, if I wouldn't have networked, I would have never known about the job that I'm in even existed. Like, I had no idea this type of business existed before I started it. And through networking, I learned about a job that I thought was really cool. And I think something else within this is kind of going more into the LinkedIn side. I was recommended to do this on looking up a company that I would really want to work for, and then finding people within that department. So for me specifically, it was marketing, and then connecting with them and seeing what their previous experience looked like, or seeing where they went to school, or seeing if I'm mutually connected with them through LinkedIn. Because it can kind of, one, like, give you a little background before you connect with them. It can show you what it took for them to get to where they are. So maybe you can like model your career off of them, not like totally verbatim, but that can potentially help you understand like what you need to do to get into a career like that.
Right.
So yeah, high supporter of networking and LinkedIn and all of that. It can be tedious. Like, I'm not going to say it was the most enjoyable 200 hours of talking to people, in the sense of like, it's just time consuming, but I learned so much, and I'm like so thankful for the people that took the time out of their busy days and busy lives to just talk to someone that they didn't know.
Right. And, I heard someone say this about networking. It's not so much of like, especially when you're getting jobs, it's not so much of what you know, it's more of who you know. Because if you know the right people, it's so much easier to get into what you want. So really putting yourself out there, even if you're like an extrovert, an introvert, just, networking with individuals who have been in that industry for a long time. They might not be able to help you, but they might be able to recommend somebody that could help you.
Yes. Yeah. And as much as like I feel like I that statement gets said all the time, and I don't like it, but I couldn't agree more with it, of it's who you know. And I think it's also like keeping in mind when you network, like all of these people that you're reaching out to, they probably did to someone else. Like it's kind of passing off the torch of like networking to each person. But I do think like, even though someone passing you off to a job or something gets your foot in the door, it's like, again, who you are as a person and the skills that you talk about and bring up and elevate that actually gets you the job. So I sometimes want to say like, it's who you know that gets you your foot in the door, but it's who you are that gets invited inside, that like seals the deal on that job. I try to like look at it from that perspective, because I think sometimes people think networking is weird, but I think it's important. It's so important, especially if you're moving to like a city that you aren't familiar with. Like I live in LA and I'm from the Midwest originally. So I kind of had to do that to just get a circle going within my career circle as well as my personal circle, because like I did not have any friends. So yeah, I think I'm a huge advocate for it. I believe in it entirely. And I think anyone that isn't on LinkedIn should be on LinkedIn. Just kind of like looking at it maybe for like 20 minutes every other day, 40 minutes every other day, if they're looking for a job.
So yeah, networking, super important. But getting back into like what you do, what does someone in this career path, like of just marketing or marketing research, what should they expect to make on average? And because I know it changes depending on where you live and what exactly you're doing.
Yeah. So I can kind of give you two answers. So if you work in marketing, in entertainment, I would say on average, it's on the like lower side. Like I would say you're looking at an average for a coordinator or specialist, like 60 to 75. Mm-hmm. That's entry level marketing entertainment. So that's the industry that I'm in. But then I would say if you're looking into marketing, and of course this is in LA, so I couldn't speak on like what it is in the Midwest, but like a marketing manager specialist role, like might be 65 to 80K starting salary in LA. If you were to look up like the average marketing manager position in LA, I think it's like 75K for an entry level role. It depends on the industry that you're in. Like I know if you work in maybe technology or finance and you're still doing marketing, you might be on the higher side of a salary or like that higher average. But I would say that's like my two gold.
Cool. Yeah. So according to Google in the United States, for a marketing coordinator, it's about 50 to 52 per year for entry level.
That's right. That sounds about right. For an average across the country. Yeah. It's interesting because like it really does depend on the industry that you pick. Like at least in Los Angeles, it really depends on the industry. If you're working for a brand, like a skincare brand or a sports brand, like maybe it's a little more, but if you're working in fashion, it might be a little less. Like it just kind of depends on the industry that you decide to go into for that marketing role.
Yeah. And that's also something that's not very transparent when even looking for jobs, you're trying to find positions that are, especially straight out of college, if you didn't have much volunteer experience. And that's one thing when you're in college, volunteer, get internships, because it's going to help you out so much, because then at least you have something under your belt experience wise, because a lot of companies these days, they don't care so much of what the degree is in. They're glad that you have it, but they're wanting you to have some kind of experience coming into this position. So definitely, like, if you're in school right now, go find internships. I know most schools, they have like a career studies department that can help you find internships or volunteer work, but also like just doing your own research depending on the area you're living in. It can vary greatly. But yeah, like a lot of companies, they're not super upfront with what a position like will pay salary wise. So it's always important to do your research when you're looking into that field to make sure that you are getting paid what you're worth and what, you know, the average is for that position. So you're not getting taken advantage of in the business world these days.
Yeah. And I would say like, that's such a like touchy subject right now, especially within like just the economy. I think everyone should feel empowered enough to advocate for themselves and try to negotiate. But sometimes negotiation is harder in certain industries or certain companies. And so it might not be feasible. But I think being super honest in the interview process and throughout the interview process is really important. You can kind of get ahead of it earlier in the interview process just to like make it easier for everyone. And it is such a taboo subject, I think, still. A lot of my friends, so I think, considered Gen Z. I was born in 98, or like the upper half of Gen Z. We all talk about it, but when you talk to my parents, they're like, we never talked about that. We never had that transparency. I'm going to, of course, point some of it to social media. Like, I think social media has shown the transparency of it all, and like working in certain industries, working in certain cities or certain jobs are going to give you this much or this much. So it has opened in a good way, like the floodgates to like negotiating for yourself, but it's also opened the floodgates of comparison and what the heck, like, how do I negotiate or how do I try to get ahead? Like, at least in California, they are transparent with how much they pay. I think it's illegal to not tell you in California. So I kind of have that benefit.
But yeah, no, it's definitely a generational thing of, you know, whether or not you talk to like your coworkers about how much you pay or you're paid, you know, when you talk to your parents, because that's something my parents never talk about. We never talk about our pay. That's just not something we do.
Yeah. And I think advocating for yourself and believing in yourself and having this like, I am of value and I can negotiate, but also this understanding of like, I'm going to start here and maybe this isn't what I want, but knowing that like, this is moving me in the direction that I want. If you want to be working at a museum and you're going to be an assistant and you're maybe not making as much, but you're like, but in the end goal, I want to be that director at that museum. And this is the path that's going to help me get to that. Then it's just, you know, of course, it's grinding it out and working to that direction. So it's a little like give and take of like reflecting back and saying, well, what is it that I want in my career? Like, what do I really, really want? Do I want to be in a high stress job and make a lot of money in sales? Like, that's what a lot of people are drawn to in sales, is making a lot of money. Or do I want to work in an environment that's in office and I'm not traveling and I have a work-life balance? Maybe I'm not making as much, but it's going to put me in the direction of being an HR director. And so it's just like getting really serious. And even I need to still do this, like getting serious about what you want your life to look like in 10 years and 5 years. Like, where do you want to be working a remote job? Do you want to be working an in-office job, a hybrid job? Do you want to be a manager or an individual contributor? So it's just like, I journaled this out. I've been journaling this out for the last 3 years and it changes a lot. But I try to look at like, what are my constants? Like, what are the things that I'm really pushing for in my job? So yeah, it's kind of like that give and take, that push and pull of the patron, like getting paid your worth, and then also understanding like, this is putting me at the trajectory that I want.
With having an anthropology degree, it makes you ask those questions about yourself. Like, what do I want? Where do I want to be? Because a lot of it, most of the time, is ethnographic research, is you're asking all these questions and trying to get these answers. So then you kind of have to put it back on yourself. Is like, what do I want out of life? You know?
Right. That is the big question. Huge, huge question for everyone. And I think even when you're early in your career, being okay with what you want is not what your friends might want, and being like confident in that choice and being comfortable with like wanting what you want, and maybe someone else doesn't agree with it or doesn't want it. That's okay. Like, that's totally fine. Because when you're in high school and college, everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's going to class 5 days a week, 4 days a week. They're doing extracurriculars. And then after college, it just totally shifts. Like the bubble really does burst. Just being, again, leading with your confidence and knowing what you want. And that's your life.
No, for sure. And so do you feel like by being a coordinator for distribution marketing at Fox, do you feel like you kind of use your anthropology degree a lot, or do you feel like your bosses are kind of glad that you have it? They're like, man, I'm so glad, because she brings a different perspective, than most people.
I would have to ask my boss, like, if he's like, her perspective's good or it's bad. No, no, I mean, honestly, I don't think I talked about so in my interview process, I brought up the fact that I was an anthropology minor because I was involved a lot in my minor. Like I was a teacher's assistant for like 2 years. I did like a digital ethnography class. So I was super involved in my video skills. So in the digital ethnography, yes, they loved it because they're like, oh, she knows how to edit. If we ever need to like edit a video or audio clips or something like that, like I had basic creative technical skills. So if anyone goes into marketing, they should know like maybe Canva, definitely Photoshop and Premiere Pro, like definitely have it in your belt. But from the anthropology perspective of just like understanding humans, I kind of think it's more of just, I don't think it's something that my team like looked for or like thought that was super impressive. I think though there are comments or ideas that I have that actually subconsciously have come from like my understanding of anthropology and trying to figure out like, well, their objective is X and our objective is Y. Like, can we get there to be like an objective A that's a middle ground, which that's basic like business. I know that's nothing new and that's not just specific to anthropology, but I think learning in school, just that open mindset, again, what we talked about earlier, has helped me like have it a little bit more than maybe I would have if I didn't minor in anthropology. And I kind of feel like I'm going like off track with the question you originally asked, but it wasn't something that I think my team was super like asking me a ton of questions within understanding anthropology. I can say when I was interviewing for my sales job, which I had before this role, I actually did lean into anthropology quite a lot because in sales, you're just working with people, you're talking to clients, you're trying to make that connection, you're trying to get that sale. And so I leaned into anthropology and just understanding humans and like different ways of interacting with them and like having that open perspective and unbiased perspective. Because in sales, I feel like the statement of like the customer is always right. It exists for a reason. So I've used it in very different ways in both the jobs that I have been in and interviewed for.
That's good. Yeah. So like if someone was interested in getting into like your field of market research or just business in general, but they're wanting to have that anthropology degree, what's your biggest advice to them that you would give? Like getting into it, like should they just have an anthropology degree? Should they stack something on top of it? Like what would you say?
I would say for someone that wants to go into marketing, that's like an account manager / brand creative, like brand point creative manager. If you study anthropology, that's great. I think it's then getting internships that are within the field that you want to work in. So like if you study anthropology and you want to do marketing at a museum, try to get an internship at a museum and also have the creative technical skills. So like take a Photoshop class, take a Premiere Pro class, but have that ready in your back pocket. So have like this academia technical skill of anthropology, because also anthropology, like you understand how to talk to people. You also understand, like I only minored in it, but I know people who major in it understand like research and doing research and like doing data and sitting in all of that. And I think that that's actually something that's in every corporate job is like a data analyst or just like being able to track data. So I think leaning into those things can help you get that internship in college or get you that entry role after. So it's having like those creative skills of like Photoshop and Premiere Pro. If you want to be like a creative marketing manager, lean into the data of anthropology because data is so used in corporate, and really fine-tuning your soft skills of just talking with people, because if you can connect with someone and show that you can learn and you're curious and you're wanting to grow in your communication skills, it can really, really go a long way in those interviews and in your jobs after school.
Now, so for the last 3 questions, these are what I'm going to ask everybody at the end of their interview. Okay. For one, is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you want to talk about, like your time at other jobs or your schooling experience?
I mean, I think this is just, I should have answered this differently. The last question you asked me, the only thing that I feel like I didn't touch upon is just the recommendation of being as involved as you can in your college, really knowing your professors, really trying to do something that's outside of just classes. Like, I was a teacher's assistant. That was probably my favorite job to this day right now. It was being a teacher's assistant. So I think that like we haven't really talked about that, but that's okay because I just laid it out really quickly. Like, it's just being involved in school so that you can show that you are doing other things outside of just classes when you're interviewing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because I was that person who wasn't really involved in campus life at all. I'm like, go to class, go to work, study, homework, go to bed.
It's like, in hindsight, can be like that. There's nothing wrong with that. And I kind of digress. There shouldn't be anything wrong with doing that because school is a lot. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, yeah, like you wish that like someone told you that when you were in school to like go get involved. Because I'm sure like you would have if you would have like been told that.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. Because it can definitely help you, because when you get involved on campus life, you know, especially in your major, like with your professors and your classmates, this is going to be your circle of peers when you're getting your job, is, you know, especially in the field of anthropology. If we're going into something like forensic anthropology, that field is so niche that most of the students that you're going to like classes with or your professors, you're going to know them for the entirety of your career. Right. So getting to know them, hanging out with them, getting to know your professors and making sure that they know who you are and, you know, they can put a face to the name. Because like if you go to ask them for a recommendation and they're like, I don't know anything about this student other than that they were in my class every day, it makes it really hard for them to write a recommendation for you if they're willing to write one at all.
I would 100% agree.
Right. And I know there's some universities where the class size is like 300 students. So sometimes it's just really hard to, you know, get to know your professor that well. But definitely I would say put a solid effort into it because it will help you in the long run.
You said it way better than I did. 100% agree.
Last 2 questions, or I guess 3. What is the worst thing about your job? Like, what just makes you go, ugh, every single day?
I don't really know. I think the worst I won't say the worst part about my job, because I really don't think there is like a bad part about it. And
that's good. You want something like that, right?
I think like I'll answer like the worst part about my career, which that sounds so awful. There's nothing like bad. I think it's something though where I have learned that like when I was in school, when I was in college, like I was always pushing for like the next thing, and the next thing happened pretty quickly because like you're in school for a semester and then you go to the next and the next and the next and the next. And I, through that, have realized that I'm somewhat, which is a good and bad thing, like impatient, but also like really driven. Mm-hmm. And so I think the hard learning that I've had is like, it's okay that the next thing isn't going to happen for 6 months. Like when you start your career after college, things do somewhat move at a slower pace than they did in high school and college.
Agreed.
Like things promotions happen at a slower rate. Like moving up the ladder can happen at a slower rate. Now, granted, I work in really big corporations, so it can look a little different from a startup. Like a startup, it might be a quicker promotional ladder, whatever. But I think I'll like reword your question. Like the hardest learning that I've had is just being patient with yourself and being patient with your job. I think like I'm still learning that 3.5 years out of school, and just kind of like giving yourself grace. I talk to my friends a lot about it and they say the same thing. So I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like it's just everyone feels this way. That's like 25, 26. So that's the answer to that question.
Okay, awesome. And it's good to, you know, if you really have to think about it, like, man, what do I hate about my job? And you kind of sit there and you're like, there's nothing I really hate about my job. Like, sure, there can be things like that are annoying, like 500 emails I got to get through in a week or whatever. But, you know, to find something, and, you know, that's the goal. That's everyone's goal is, you know, other than making as much money as you can, is finding something that like fuels your soul, like that you love going into work. It's not a job. It's like, yeah, I can go into work and be like, we're going to do something new. This is great. I'm excited, rather than being like, oh, I have to go to work again. Like, this is literally just for a paycheck.
Yeah. And I think like there is some of that monotonous that happens with your job. Like, shoot, I like don't want to wake up this morning. Like, I don't want to go in, but I really enjoy like the team that I work on. Like, everyone's super nice and really smart. And like, even though I sometimes like I have that monotonous or that stressor or that feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, I don't want to go into work, I can't imagine, like 3 years ago, I can't imagine having this job. 3 years ago, I can't imagine living where I am. And I feel so grateful. Like, I kind of feel like I have to remind myself, like, okay, you came from this and you're here. You should be happy and proud of like what you've worked towards.
Right. Celebrating the accomplishments.
No, of course, though, I will get annoyed by an email that happens at like maybe 6 p.m. because I'm like, I'm off work. But like, those are things that everyone experiences. And those are like, you know, that's part of a job, and that's part of school. Like, school does that too. Like, I think it's just like being patient with yourself and being patient with like your career is going to look a little different. Like, your accomplishments and your growth is going to look different than it did before career. Right.
And yeah. And, you know, comparison is the thief of joy. You know, you can't compare where you're at to where somebody else is at. Be like, man, I wish I was there already. You know, because they might have gone through a lot of other different things to get to where they are. And, you know, your time's coming. And I hate it when people say it to me all the time, because I'm like, oh, I'm so behind. I'm almost 30 and I'm still not where I want to be. It's like, you just have to be patient with yourself.
I hate it too when someone says it to me. I'm like, please shut up. But I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I'm going to say it to someone else, so someone else has to say it to me. But I just feel like social media has like really intensified that of that comparison of like, oh my God, they're doing this. What? And I'm sitting here. What do you mean they're doing that? What did they do? But again, like, just like you're looking at them, someone else is looking at you, like thinking the exact same thing. And it's so much easier said to you and said to me out loud. But to like remember it, like, no, I am good. I am pushing for the things that I want. It's just like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I just need to throw my phone against the wall and I'm going to be good. Yeah, it's those like little reminders of like, I'm good. Like, I'm on this path, and like, the only thing that really matters is like you moving forward. And like moving forward, oh my God, I feel like I'm turning into a TED Talk. Sorry. Even if it's like a little step, like every day, it's still moving forward, and you're not staying stagnant. You're not staying docile. Like, you're moving forward, and that's all that you can do. Okay, I'm off my Go to your next question.
What is the best thing about your job? What do you just love about it?
It's another tough question. There's a lot. I would have to say, just like, I think understanding like the business of the industry that I'm in. Because growing up, like, I was a huge movie person. I was like, oh my gosh, everyone makes movies and it's great. And that was it. And I was a huge sports person. So I was like, I watched the game and that was it. And I never thought about like everything that goes on behind the scenes of like, how do you get a football game up on TV? Like, how does that happen? How do you market a college football game? How do you like make sure that people are like watching it and tuning in and they're active? And so I think it's like understanding like that behind the curtain business of entertainment and sports. I think it's fascinating. And it's just like, I don't know. I was like, I thought it would be one thing and it's something totally different in like the best way. Exactly. It's like kind of seeing, like, I don't want to call it magic because in hindsight, it can be like, I guess, somewhat boring things, but it's like all of the work, like all of this hard work that goes into just like making sure someone's able to like turn on their TV on Sunday and be able to watch a Dallas Cowboys game or something.
So where can listeners learn more about you or what you do?
I would say LinkedIn. I mean, it's not like I'm posting on LinkedIn, but I would say LinkedIn is where you could find me. That's one. And then my TikTok account, I would say my TikTok account though is documenting more of like what my corporate life looks like. As I'm trying to become a Pilates instructor on the side. So, which is interesting because I actually use my digital ethnography video skills for my TikTok. So there you go. Which, yeah, I would say my TikTok and my LinkedIn.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I'll have all those linked in the show notes for the episode. But yeah, I had such a great time talking with you, and I'm so sorry about all the technical difficulties.
Oh my God, it's not even an issue. I feel like half my meetings are like, you're frozen. We can't see you. We can't hear you. So it's all good. I appreciate you reaching out to me and like having this conversation. I said to you like in our first call, like I wish I had this podcast when I was in school. Like I wish I knew something like this to listen to, especially so niche and specific within anthropology. So I'm honored that you asked me to be on this.
Yeah. And if you ever, check off on your bucket list of getting that master's, I would like to have you back on.
Be the first to know. Oh my God, that might be in like 15 years. So no. Yeah, you have a great night. Have a great week. And thank you so much for letting me be on this podcast.
Thanks for listening to another episode of AnthroPuzzled. This show was produced by me. A special thanks to Cheyenne Brewer for editing the website and episode descriptions, and to Leah Akers for the incredible logo design. The music is courtesy of Chad Crouch, aka Poddington Bear of Sound of Picture. If you have any questions, you can reach me at abby.letsinger@anthropuzzled.com. That's abby.letsinger@anthropuzzled.com. Or as AnthroPuzzled on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok. Until next time.